gonna get started. First of all, thank you all for being here for the work session today. I'm going to ask everybody, if you can, to please stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a couple of items on the work session. The first item that we have is actually presentation on suburban agricultural district alternatives. I'm going to ask Dan Howard, our planning director, to please come forward and introduce the report, reintroduce the report.
Good afternoon. Suppose I should ask if people can hear me, right? Can you hear me okay? No answer. Okay. It's an inside thing. We're pleased this afternoon to have Molly Guadioso and John Steinmetz from Collier's Engineering here with us to give you a presentation of the work that they've come pretty close to completing for us in a review of the suburban agriculture zoning district and how it's utilized in the town, where it's located, and maybe some options for rethinking how we use SA or don't use it in the future. Back in February of 2022, the town board asked that this study be done. It's taken a while to get it done. It's largely because the scope of it had to be refined a little bit. There have been some time lapses in between, but there's a lot of conversation about it. I want to stress that this information that you have before you has been informed by the town's comprehensive plan, its farmland protection plan, and one thing we really want to emphasize with you and with anyone in the town that's interested in this, those are the guiding policies for the planning department. So you'll see that most of the recommendations in here are generally consistent with the comprehensive plan, the farmland protection plan, and what happens to this after this will be hopefully up for some discussion with the board as you move forward. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Molly Guadioso to come up and present this report to you.
Okay, thanks Dan, thank you. Board members, we'll, as you were saying, have just a couple of slides to kind of walk through the key points within the report. Is this on? Oh, okay. So just a little bit of context. I know as Dan kind of walked through, but you know, as we've worked through a lot of the suburban agricultural district regulations, going through the existing plans and studies, and kind of working with staff to understand sort of the historical perspective, you know, we've really come out to understand that the SA district has kind of served and was previously considered as a holding zone. So something that, you know, we know might change in the future depending on, you know, what growth was happening or other, you know, kind of the direction within the town. As it's kind of come out in looking at the comprehensive plan, the most recent bicentennial comprehensive plan, there's some areas where they're currently zoned SA that are not effective in achieving the goals of the comprehensive plan, the same with the farmland protection plan. And there's a lot of kind of areas where there may be cause for uncertainty just due to kind of the SA zoning and its context, and some of the areas where we know, again, the open space and farming viability becomes a consideration. So, you know, as was stated, the comprehensive plan, the farmland protection plan, those really served as kind of a foundation in looking at the future land use goals within the town to serve kind of the assessment here. And, you know, I just bring that out. I mean, it is an element, that alignment, particularly with your comp plan, becomes something really important as well when you're looking at the context of establishing the plan under New York state law. The project goals, as we've done in the report, is really to summarize the vision of the existing plans and the direction for future development, or in some cases open space and farming, making sure we're hopefully creating a common understanding of some of the conditions that exist today with the land use and any constraints on development, looking at different issues and opportunities based off of that assessment of the SA district and other related districts, and trying to increase the certainty and predictability in some of the transition areas. Touching base on the comprehensive plan, the primary land use categories that the SA district kind of applies to, this map is sort of just an outline of the SA district properties overlaid on top of the comprehensive plan. We're looking at the rural residential areas, single-family residential, recreation, open space, and greenway areas, and agriculture areas. So those kind of the context from the comprehensive plan there and what the future for those areas within the town are something that we took into consideration. A lot of the policy guidance within the comprehensive plan, again, is looking at your open space, ag, and rural residential areas, making sure that, we're rezoning for transitional areas and, have a purposeful zone applied that helps to protect some of the open space areas, but also serve as transition to some of the developed areas that have happened over time. And again, preserving the agricultural areas. There's a area plan within the comprehensive plan, the North Amherst Focal Planning Area. This does give some guidance again to those agricultural properties, the lower density or rural residential areas, as well as some of the green space in the broader context. The Farmland Protection Ag Development Plan, again, they identify through that plan 3 supporting districts, that could be applied to these parcels. These are the parcels within the plan that have been targeted for protection. And that includes, as it's applied to SA district, but recommends moving towards utilizing the rural residential district and the ag district in these properties and in adjacent properties to, again, serve as kind of that buffer and transitional area. The zoning itself, the rezoning sort of issues came out as our team kind of dove into the regulations, into the map. We noticed that there were a handful of misclassified or miszoned parcels. They're just something that may be residential today, fully developed, not likely to change as it's part of a neighborhood or something else that is just the wrong zoning classification to reflect that today. There's been some areas where we've noticed an inconsistent land use character and development pattern with the zoning that's applied today. Again, just looking at areas where there may be a more appropriate district, in many cases existing district, that could better capture those developments or that property. And then, again, looking for the recognition of the transition areas. So typically those properties that are abutting recently developed or in, developed properties against the larger properties and lower density. So, really came out of this as we knew there's no clean answer. There's a lot of different solutions depending on the geographic area, depending on the context of the parcel itself, whether it's developed, adjacent to development, et cetera. And we also know that there's a series of down-the-line implications from some of this. So just the understanding of how modifying one may, have an impact to adjacent parcels or, again, impact to the implications from the comprehensive plan. We also identified a number of suburban agricultural parcels currently having a minimum lot area of 1 acre and a minimum lot width requirement of 200 feet. There's a good number of parcels currently zoned SA that are non-conforming based off of that standard alone. So 38% do not meet the lot size, 57% do not meet the lot width. And we also know, in looking at the sanitary sewer district as it's kind of been put forth in the future of that within the town's various plans, that area, it's in the northern portion, is not within that district, and therefore it's unlikely to have the higher density residential development that SA and some of the other residential districts account for. So in looking at how we started to identify these alternatives, the factors we looked at is just what I've gone through: the lot size, the current land use and development character, and the character around that property. Looking at adjacent zoning designations, in some situations, it might make sense to just have that absorbed as part of the adjacent zoning. We looked at that sanitary sewer district boundary. The future land use guidance, again, this was a lot based off of those parcels where there's not a lot happening right now. But looking at the comprehensive plan, the farmland protection ag development plan for what that future land use pattern looks like. And when we were looking at this and sort of the consideration of the factors, or more or less kind of the order of operations here, we were looking at that context of where existing development is, what's the concentration of land use, what's the potential for future development, with whether it's in proximity to existing infrastructure or other development, and the level of environmental constraints. So with that, we've put forth a series of recommendations that really spans rezoning parcel by parcel, potentially for a variety of these areas, having some minor zoning district requirement revisions to help address some of those nonconformities, and implementing some potential open space or conservation strategies. The report itself is broken up into 4 geographic areas, kind of a little bit easier to chew when you start to look at it in those areas. So South Amherst being that greenish area there, south of North French Road. North Amherst, we're calling that the north area south of Schultz and Smith Roads. North Amherst, then north of Schultz and Smith Roads, and then northwest Amherst. So those kind of, as we walk through and as you go through the report, are the areas in which we have individual kind of recommendations. The alternatives really are comprised of utilizing a series of existing tools or in existing districts. So carrying the agricultural district that's currently within the town code, some minor modifications to your rural residential district, the modifications to your R1 district, and carrying over the Recreation Conservation District, RC district, that is existing, but some caveats I'll kind of get to in the open space portion. It does still allow for some level of development. Some considerations, again, as a point of that, as we've noted, environmental constraints and some of the other guidance from the comp plan, being open space preservation. There are some alternatives to be considered for modifying conservation regulations or adding an optional open space district. Overall, the results of this and any implementation of these alternatives would remove the SA district from the map entirely, and have it be replaced by some other district, as I said, all existing today. So, this is kind of a term that applies to a large majority of the residential parcels within the town. These are a lot of the ones that were either non-conforming just by having been zoned SA, but a more appropriate residential district could apply. We were calling quote-unquote right-sized those, found the district that best fit their minimum lot sizes, the existing land use that's there today, the context of the development that it's either located within or adjacent to. So these are really what I think would be considered cleanups, and just sort of, again, kind of bringing the right zoning classification to the table. Some of the revisions, as I mentioned, that are needed to achieve this and getting rid of all of the SA district would be a minor modification to the rural residential minimum width requirement, going from 200 to 100, and reducing your increasing your R1 district minimum area to 1 acre. The R1 district is used minimally today. I think that serves as a really good transition, and so we sort of adapted that to see if it could fill in the gap there. Going through the sub areas, so I apologize, I know these maps are a little small, but I'll give you the high points on some of these. The South Amherst geographic area is very predominantly the right sizing of residential parcels. A lot of holdovers maybe from subdivisions, and the open space area was left SA or some other adjacent parcels. There is one existing commercial use and transit road that we would be capturing, making sure that that is rezoned appropriately there. And then the back of the commercial properties, looking at those as the RC district for some buffering purposes. Vacant lots, we also looked at those going to RC just because of the constrictions from the wetlands area, and any of the open space areas, as I mentioned, from previous subdivisions being RC. In North Amherst, the area here again, south of Schultz and Smith Roads, again, a lot of right sizing of those established single family neighborhoods to the district that best fits that current land use development pattern. So that's across R1, R2, and R3 districts. We also did the same kind of approach to your existing multifamily developments in that area, and recognizing the presence of commercial properties that, for whatever reason, have had that SA holdover. Rezoning vacant lands that are around some of those residential areas to be in conformance with the adjacent uses, or the recreation conservation where it's environmentally constrained. And then this includes the first section of applicable parcels from the Erie County Managed Agricultural District 17 that would be now potentially have the agricultural district applied to, which brings again another level kind of protection to the viability and right to farm there. In the northernmost North Amherst geographic area, this is really, again, predominantly some of those agricultural districts, 17 parcels. We looked at a lot of the very large lot residential parcels that are already developed, mostly ranging from 1 to 3 acres, rezoning those to R1. Looking at the large and vacant residential lots, again, this is some of the section from the comp plan and looking at that as rural residential. So we were adapting and applying the rural residential district, same with the North Amherst focal area and some of the guidance from the comprehensive plan as well, the ag plan, and serving as a transition in this area. This does, as I mentioned before, require those amendments to the RR and R1 districts to support what the intent of rezoning here would do. And that's just those parcels again. So from northwest Amherst, this is kind of the last focal area. This is probably, again, one of the more simple areas to be looking at. It's a lot of the right sizing of some of the smaller residential properties. In this case, ranges from lot size pattern for R2, R3, and R4 based on those existing lot dimensions. The larger properties we would acknowledge as they are residential today, single-family residential, taking those into rural residential, and looking at your open space areas as RC. And there's been a handful of these throughout, but some non-residential properties, more of a utility property, in this case applying the community facilities district. As we went through in the beginning, some of those inconsistencies that we identified for the currently zoned SA parcels, we also happened to, just by way of making our way through the map, notice a couple of other ones that we felt may as well call attention to, kind of a similar approach here. So these are some that are generally adjacent to some of those SA district parcels. We just noticed that they may currently be miszoned or misclassified for their existing use, or as it's relevant to a comp plan recommendation. So the rezoning there is really just to kind of help make some more of those cleanups where that made sense. I can't help myself. If I notice it, I'm going to let you know. And then the last piece here is open space. We've identified kind of a two-part approach here. The default approach, as it's shown in the alternatives report, is utilizing the RC district. It is, as I've walked through, applied to those recreation open space parcels or parcels where development is not desirable or feasible. The potential conflict here, as I mentioned earlier, is the RC district does permit daycares, indoor recreation, and there are some considerations to be made for what types of parks and rec uses are appropriate in what could be classified as undisturbed open space areas or natural areas. So one way we could achieve that is by amending the RC district to remove those more intensive uses and have the existing community facilities district take over those parks and rec properties. But I think another way to do this in a very common way is to have something like an open space district that is just a very clear statement of this is where our true open space exists and there's no real development implication. And conservation side of things, looking at right now, there's a use of clustering. It's actually listed as a use within the districts, within the town's code. It is an opportunity to kind of expand that to apply more broadly. I know it's something that's done in practice, but opening up the opportunity just by way of text would be beneficial. looking at what your potential threshold is there. Again, just identifying some of those areas where in and around development, future development may make sense, and starting to redefine some of what counts as the open space for any clustering provisions or conservation development, beefing up or at least looking at, again, the flood stormwater provisions. As we know, things are kind of changing with development here and the impacts, and providing a better connection between the subdivision chapter of the town code and your various plan development options. I think that's everything. Maybe before we go on, the last slide I just have is the implementation actions, if there's any questions or thoughts.
Yes, thank you. Not so much well, I guess it is a question, stop me if I misunderstand it. But when we're talking about the much northern part of Amherst, this area up here, I don't know if they can move back to that. By making it rural residential, we are essentially restricting any significant development in that area. Am I correct?
High density development. So you would be able to have residential development of a like a larger lot pattern. You know, again, part of that comes from the concerns for not having that sewer capacity or support there for a higher density, and there are some environmental constraints for that. But you could still have some form of residential development. It would not be at the scale that you would have under other districts.
And you touched on that, but I want to remind folks on that too, because the sewer lines now don't run out that far. Any kind of large-scale residential development would be impractical.
Correct.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Been through this report a couple times. I thank you for your hard work on it. We're going to talk a little bit about where to go next as a town. So, you know, implementation actions.
All right.
It's up. Do you want to talk a little bit about where we're?
Well, I think just I would remind you, we last week we sent along a list of suggested implementation strategies that you might employ, and if you have any questions about those along the way, please let us know. Appreciate that.
I guess from a standpoint of, I mean, obviously there's a lot of parcels, right? There's a lot of
About
action.
1,100 parcels.
Yeah. So the idea of trying to do it all at once is if we were going to start, maybe this is a question for Colliers, if we were going to start, you know, where do we begin, right? This is sort of the tip of the iceberg,
Yeah.
you know, moment.
So, you know, I think, and Molly, you're welcome to join in here, but, you know, we think probably the priority here would be to try to do what we can do to protect our agricultural resources. So where the SA zoning can be removed and an AG can be applied to those places that are currently either within the Erie County Ag District or they're conserved by some kind of conservation easement that the town has, and or those properties that surround those, to try to protect that resource. I will tell you, which I'm sure you know, the comprehensive plan that you have under your use right now is the first plan in my time here in Amherst to recognize agriculture as an actual land use, a use to be preserved, a character to be preserved in a part of the town that folks wish to be rural. So these actions, and particularly the implementation strategy I just mentioned, would be directly related to trying to ensure that that vision stays in place for the future of North Amherst. After that, in the list that I gave you, we would probably start to work our way down, if you will, down from North Amherst. Shellis Road is a key corridor. North French to Shellis is key, but as we get further down, you know, maybe the time sensitivity is not so great. However, we do know, for an example, the Dodge Road rezoning, we have some interpretation challenges where you know, the suburban agriculture in the same title of the zoning district creates some ambiguity about what the intent is. So some of those probably need to be addressed early as well.
All right. Anybody else have any questions about process next? All right. Well, I will thank you for coming in, Molly, for doing that presentation. Again, for the quality of the report. I know this isn't the first time you've been here, but new board relative to the presentation. So we thank you for that. And we look forward to working with you moving forward as we start towards implementation. Thanks. I'm not sure how to transition from planning and zoning to the next portion of our meeting, other than to say that if there's anything that could happen in town business, Jim Zemanik's probably been part of it over the years. The next item we have this evening is really an opportunity to pay tribute to somebody who I look to as a mentor, who's taught me more in a short time than anybody could have hoped. When I first took office as mayor of the village of Williamsville, Jim was right there talking about how he would like to make sure I understood states of emergency and ICS procedures, all of which he told me we'd only use once or twice here and there. As I became town supervisor in the town of Amherst, I realized how invaluable in how immeasurable Jim's contributions to this town are. As we've progressed over the years, on a personal level, I want to thank Jim because I don't know that there's anybody in town government who's been part of some of the most difficult moments in leadership, and has probably seen me at the most stressed and frustrated, possibly the most worried moments, as Jim has, and he's always been a wonderful mentor and a wonderful leader and a wonderful voice. I'm going to read a proclamation. I usually don't read them all the way through, but this is a pretty good one. So, whereas after 44 years of service with the town of Amherst, James Zemanik, Director of Emergency Services and Safety, is culminating his career on June 28th, 2024. Even though we had a moratorium, I thought we discussed on that. Whereas Jim and his wife Holly have been longtime Amherst residents, raising 4 children today, enjoying being grandparents to 6 beautiful grandchildren. And whereas Jim started working with the town of Amherst in June of 1980 as a laborer in the highway department and continued to do so until being promoted to motor equipment operator in December of 1984. And whereas as a valued town employee of 14 years with the highway department, Jim Zemanik realized the need for the town to have a Department of Emergency Services and Safety, and he worked with many of the town leaders to establish this department, becoming the Emergency Services and Safety Coordinator until transitioning to his current role on December 1st, 1990. And whereas as a Director of Emergency Services and Safety, Jim focused on management of emergencies that have had or could have had an impact on our community, whereas Jim's office has guided the town through 15 federal disaster declarations. 15 federal disaster declarations, that's not local. 15 federal disaster declarations during his tenure, coordinating the town's response and incidents, which included the October 2006 storm, the crash of Flight 3407, the H1N1 swine flu epidemic, multiple floods, snowstorms, the COVID pandemic, the blizzard of 2022, and I could go on, and certainly more. Whereas Jim has consistently focused on townwide emergency planning, but is diversified to include instructing OSHA training classes through the town, providing the town employees with CPR, and managing the New York State mandated cancer coverage program for the town's eligible volunteer firefighters, including those who assisted at Ground Zero following the attacks of September 11, 2001. And whereas Jim Zemanek is a member of the Western New York Incident Management Team, holding the position of Safety Officer and Situation Unit Leader, is an American Heart Association AED CPR First Aid Instructor, oversees the Town of Amherst Property Insurance Program, is a nationally certified Level 2 Fire and Emergency Services Instructor, and has taught part-time for the New York State Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services since 2008. And whereas Jim worked tirelessly through the COVID-19 pandemic and its aftermath as a point of contact for the town and coordinated the requirements needed for federal expense reimbursement with the county and state officials, and working on expense reimbursements is an emergency task unto itself, in which he was responsible for processing reimbursement claims totaling $25 million returned to the town. And whereas Jim is currently an assistant chief with the Williamsville Fire Department, whereas he served for 50 years, including 16 of which were spent among the chief's ranks as either a chief or assistant chief. Therefore, be it resolved, the Town of Amherst Board recognizes Jim Zemanek for his immense knowledge, resourcefulness, outstanding leadership, dedication to our community, and will sorely be missed upon his well-deserved retirement. Congratulations, Jim. Would everybody please?
I mean, it's been a pleasure and an honor working for the town. Had a lot of good people work with and work for over the years and stuff. Couldn't have done it without Beth Allen back there. Been with me since 2000, without question. We'd be in good hands with Brandon. Been with me for a lot of years and stuff. And my family, without question, my sisters, brothers, my kids are here and stuff. It's been a pleasure. I'm not going anywhere. I still got some 28 service in my paperwork, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I tried to have a conversation with the state about not accepting it.
Well, they did grind the first set that I had, and they go back and refile.
That's as close as I can. I want to thank his family as well, but anybody who knows Jim's service knows that that it didn't stop in the evenings and certainly didn't stop at weekends and certainly overlapped holidays. There were a lot of times where I'm sure everybody's happy to be home with family and Jim's sitting there on the other end of a phone call or staring at me across the table at an emergency operations center. And you know, your contributions and sacrifice as well made so much in Amherst better. So thank you to his family. Jim, thank you so much. So the only remaining item on our agenda this evening is our town board agenda items. I'm going to try to move through those and potential consent agenda. We do have a proclamation this evening, although what didn't originally appear. Angela will be presenting that. Okay. And then we have resolution 210. So we have a public hearing on 46, 54, 60, 68, 74, and 84 South Linden Street. Bicentennial Comprehensive Plan Amendment, that's Mr. Palumbo presenting that. And then we have development review actions on the seeker determination on 6,000 and 620 North Bailey. Adoption of local law to amend the zoning map, and then the seeker determination on 2280 Worley. And then the adoption of local law to amend the zoning map there. Are there any questions about any of those? Okay. Regarding consent agenda this evening, we have the following resolutions to offer. Resolution 503 is the lighting district extension, Miller's Crossing subdivision, the final order. I don't think we have to do that with voice, right? Any questions regarding? Oh, it should be voice? Okay, nope, that's fine. That's why I ask. Resolution 504 is an extension of the consolidating lighting district. It'll be the same thing on Harding. Are there any questions regarding either of those? Resolution 505 is the consent of formation of Regency Commons Water Works Corp. We're there with a.
That's a correction, there was
Yeah.
reference to a corporation
So that could just be via consent. That's via consent. If any reason not to do that, okay. Resolution 506 is the rights-of-way use agreement with ErieNet Local Development Corporation, CRS 4852. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 504 is a settlement of an Article 7 matter of 95 NYRPT LLC versus Town of Amherst. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 508 is the settlement of an Article 7 matter with Northtown property owner versus Town of Amherst. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 509 is a new firefighter for Swarmville Fire Company. Any questions regarding the appointment? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 510 is a fireworks display for the Country Club of Buffalo. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 511 is a fireworks display for Transit Valley Country Club. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 512 is the carpet Harlem Road Community Center. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 513 is the emergency replacement of the HVAC at the town court, CRS 3648. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 514 are budget transfers and amendments. Any questions regarding those? Any reason to withhold them from consent? Resolution 515 is an award of special inspections and testing with Whitestone Associates Engineering and Geology, PLLC, for Royal Park Sports Complex, Town of Amherst, project number 2019.055, CRS 4866. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 516 is a National Grid Utility Work Permit application, CRS 4768. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 517 is Public Safety Dispatcher, Central Fire Alarm. Any questions regarding the appointment? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 518 is the Community Development Assistant Planning Department. Any questions regarding that resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 519 is the Community Development Assistant Planning Department. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 520 is the Labor Crew Chief for Youth and Recreation. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 521 is a maintenance worker for Youth and Recreation. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 522 is a maintenance worker for Youth and Rec. Any questions regarding that appointment? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 523 is a senior maintenance worker for Building Maintenance Facilities Department. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 524 is a senior maintenance worker for Youth and Recreation Department. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 525 is a senior maintenance worker for Youth and Recreation. Any questions regarding the appointment? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 526 is a wastewater treatment plant operator trainee, engineering plant number 16. Any questions regarding the appointment? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 527 is a wastewater treatment plant operator trainee, engineering plant 16 as well. Any questions regarding that appointment? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 528 is an update computer and mobile device usage policy 2024. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 529 is temporary access agreement use for the Amherst Police Department Community Policing and Training Facility for the United States Naval Sea Cadets Corps, CRS 4797. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 530 is Ferguson Electric Service Incorporated Transformer Testing and Repair Service Contract, change order number 1 for the Town of Amherst Project 2019.002G, CRS extension 3073, and original 2042. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 531 is a WPCF Building 13 uninterruptible power supply UPS replacement town project number 2023.002A. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 532 is the WPCF Building number 7 variable frequency drive VFD procurement town project number 2022.02002F. That's 2022.002F. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 533, Professional Services Agreement, GHD Consulting Services, Stormwater Inspection Services, CRS number 4834. Any questions regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 534, Professional Service Amendment for J.M. Davidson Engineering, DPC Stormwater Inspection Services, CRS 4835. Any question regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Resolution 535 is postage machine, CRS 4868. Any question regarding the resolution? Any reason to withhold it from consent? Communication 49 is a Newman Center request for fee waiver. Recommend we grant that via consent. Any reason to not do that? Communication 50 is correspondence from Sean Hopkins, Esquire, regarding 4300 Millersport Highway. What's the action on this? Yeah. I guess it, right, so Sean, if we're gonna refer to planning and ask for the resolution, you wanna approach? Right. So regarding the request for 4300 Millersport, I mean, that would be something you'd wanna see as a resolution on the next board meeting agenda?
Yeah, that would be fine, and as you probably already know, you've signed the out-of-district sewer agreement, so this is just the
Right.
next step.
Okay, so it'll appear, when's the next, is it June 24th? June
You
24th?
may want to refer to planning and the town attorney, that's up to you.
Yeah, but this isn't it's not a change of zoning. There's no reason we can't do that at 3. Yeah, so I'll recommend we refer to planning and to the town attorney, and ask for a document to be prepared for the 24th board meeting.
Thank you.
Any reason not to do that via consent? Communication 51 is a summons and complaint. Tana S. Bedencourt versus Town of Amherst et al. Recommend we receive this and refer to the town attorney. Any reason not to do that via consent? Okay, 2 public improvement permits. 536, which is a private improvement permit. 3124, it's a storm system on Harding Road subdivision. 2005.101/SUB 2022-01. I'm the reason we held that from last meeting, just because I'm trying to wrap my head around Harding Road North and some of the drainage issues that we have. the way that road was constructed. This is different. It's a different system entirely. So I recommend we approve that via consent. Is there any reason not to do that? Okay. Resolution 537 is a private improvements permit number 3125 water line for 4200 to 4230 Ridgely Road, 2023.011/SP 2023-03. I recommend we approve that via consent as well. Any reason not to do that? All right, we do have an executive session to adjourn to discuss some litigation updates, active litigation. I'm going to motion to adjourn to executive session at this time. All in favor?